Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today, I'm gonna go over a game I played on my kind of new account. I mentioned a comment before how I basically reset my chess account because I just wanted to climb back to the top again. But basically, I'm gonna review this game that I played. Uh, once again, I'm keeping the names out just for respect of my opponents, but it's a pretty good game. It's probably one of the best games I've had on this account recently. But yeah, I'm just gonna go through the game. I'm playing with the black pieces. The elo now is about mid to high 1300, so slowly getting back to my actual rating. But yeah, anyways, so my opponent here started with pawn to e4. Uh, and once again, e4, I always play the move c5. Sometimes I'll play knight f6, Al Johan's defense. Maybe sometimes you'll even see me play some sort of modern, but for the most part, I play c5. And here my opponent plays knight f3. Now I'm starting to see a lot more people like playing knight f3. This is actually one of the first times I've seen somebody play knight f3 at this level, and even from the games previous. So that's the open Sicilian. Basically, the idea is that black's going to play this move pawn to d6, white's going to play pawn to d4, takes, and you have an open Sicilian. So that's what happens, takes. I play this move knight to f3. My opponent plays knight to c3. I mean f6, not f3. But anyways, here now as black, you basically have a bunch of different options. You can play this move, pawn to g6, get a dragon going. I hate the dragon, but unfortunately I've had to resort to using it a multitude of times because my opponents like to play the sideline of the Sicilian. They basically play something like this, or they'll even play this move here, which is just terrible. So I will just play a nice fianchetto, and I'll just roll my enemies, steamroll them. But yeah, I play this move pawn to a6, the knight over Sicilian, my favorite Sicilian. And here white has, I've said this before, but white basically has like more or less 18 different moves that have all been tried and tested. You have bishop here, bishop here, bishop here, bishop here, bishop here, bishop here, bishop here. Not there. You have knight here. You have a bunch of stuff that's been tried, tested, and verified by computers as being good. Now here, my opponent opts for this move. Now here, actually, this is a really good move. Here, Bobby Fischer famously loved this variation of the Sicilian. It's called the poison pawn variation. So here, you push the pawn to e6. My opponent doesn't follow this, but just so you guys know, the poisoned pawn variation is basically here. What's going to happen now is white's going to play this move pawn to f4. Black plays queen to b6, queen d2, and you play this. And it's called the poison pawn variation. And the idea is that you're going to go here, and you're basically going to argue that, okay, you gave up a pawn, you basically gambited your pawn away, but typically you want to be careful when taking pawns, specifically on the b2 and b7 square, because they're known as poison pawns. Because if you can take it, typically you're going to get chased away with the rook, and you're going to lose a temper. You're going to increase your opponent's development, but at the expense of a pawn. So just be careful with it. It's called poison pawn because it can be very helpful or very unhelpful, and can actually lose you the game if you're not careful. You can trap your piece very easily. But that's not what happens here. After I play this move pawn to e6, my opponent plays this move bishop to c4. I really hate this move. It's called the Shefschnigen attack, I think, the Sozen attack, something like that. But it doesn't really do anything. And in fact, simply I just have to go bishop here, short castle, and this isn't a threat because I have my pawn here, I have a bishop here, it's not doing anything, and in fact, you can just chase it away pretty easily with this move pawn to b5. Here my opponent wasted tempo because he went here and he slid his bishop back. And here, once again, I'm hiding the eval bar just because I don't think eval bars are too helpful at this level. Just play to learn, evaluate after on your own, but typically you don't need the eval bar. And here I play this move queen to b6 with ideas of either taking this b2 pawn, the poisoned pawn, or taking this knight. Here my opponent finds the best move. He slides his knight back here, and here I just develop my knight. Computer doesn't like this. Actually, the computer says queen c7 would be better. Honestly, I don't think so. I think just getting development, I think keeping this pressure here is always going to be beneficial. This pawn can't move, so you don't have to worry about ideas of f4, f5. f3, f4, f5. You don't have to worry about that. So here I just develop my knight. My opponent very simply slides his knight over. Don't really know what that was for. But here now I finally place move queen c7, simply because it's the only place I can go without losing my queen. Actually, that's why I can go here, but then here and it's just trapped. But yeah. So here my opponent sets bishop back to e3. I play pawn to b5 with ideas of kicking this knight out. Here my opponent slides his knight into b6. Now this is actually a part where I think I miscalculated, more or less. I miscalculated because you're going to see. Here I slide my rook to b8, best move, once again, because it traps his knight. But here my opponent plays move pawn to c4. And after pawn to c4, I play b takes. Now here actually I think it would have been better to sack my rook, kind of, take, and say that because I have two pieces at the expense of my rook, I have a bishop and a knight, I'm actually winning this game. And I think computer backs us to actually have the eval bar turned off. But yeah, we're just doing like cold hard analysis. But here I think this would have been better with the black pieces, but instead of doing this, I simply take on c4 because I don't want to sack this. In fact, there's a very famous game by Paul Morphy where he plays like the Evans Gambit. I forget against who, but it's like one of the first games you learn as a chess player. But he basically would sacrifice his knight and bishop for a rook, and it would always be bad, basically, because you're giving up two pieces for one major piece. But yeah, so I played this. I guess that's what I sort of thought. I sort of thought like the Paul Morphy sacrifice wouldn't work in this case. But yeah, here I play takes, and I'm kind of a pawn grabber. You know, I love free pawns. So I take the free pawn. Here my opponent slides his queen to g4, basically trying to threaten checkmate eventually. I slide my knight back, kick out his queen. Very simply just slides his queen back to g3. Here, I put my knight on e5. I think the computer wouldn't like this, because I looked at this a little bit after. The computer doesn't like this. I think the computer instead likes still rook takes in here and just winning this. It really wanted me to sack this, and honestly, I think that now just looking at it and thinking about it for a couple hours, I think this would have been better actually. But instead, I slide my knight up to e5, basically saying I want to take your knight or your bishop. And here my opponent slides his bishop to h6. Can't be taken because this prevents it, and in fact this is just mate. So here I have one of two moves. I can either push my pawn to g6, or I can slide my knight back to g6. Actually, I think there's more. I think I play knight g4, yeah, here. Even knight h5. Knight h5 just an ugly looking move though. So here I slide my knight back to g6, and then my opponent plays knight takes bishop. I play rook takes. Here my opponent bishop takes. Very nicely just slide my rook back, kicking out the bishop. I play pawn takes bishop. And in fact here, I know I'm winning right now. I'm thinking, okay, this is just completely winning for me. And I know I'm winning because this isn't a threat. I have pawns here, sure they're split, but I know that if I can get my king on g7, and this can't be taken because if he takes with the bishop, or even just tries to somehow gets his knight over here, I can fix my pawn structure again. I can play h takes g, and have a better pawn structure and have my king on these two dark squares. And now here my opponent slides his knight to d4, and I said this before, I pushed my king up, saying that the computer might not like this move. I think, looking at this from a more, I guess, normal perspective, I'm assuming something like queen c5, because I put pressure on this knight, kick it out. Even queen b6, same thing. Or maybe rook here, maybe just getting control of the file, maybe something like that. But I think here at the time I was like, this seems like the most logical because I'm just helping to protect everything. King obviously last line of defense in case I somehow miscalculate and everything goes south. Here my opponent slides his rook to c1, trying to kick out my queen. Simply just slide my queen to b6. Yeah, because this is also a line I calculated. I said now looking at it, I think I wanted this first, but I think for me, I was like, I think my king will eventually need to be on the g7 square, so I did a preemptive move, and I knew that if you do this, this is basically just forced. Because even then, had I gone queen c5, same thing here, and then sure, you could say, okay, I'll take this, but I think this file, with how this is, I feel like I'm being suffocated, kind of, you know? But that's kind of how I felt. But yeah, he simply just slides his knight over. I can't take because I'll just lose my queen. So I slide my rook to e8, takes, rook c4, queen takes pawn, just a free pawn. Once again, love my free pawns. Here he plays queen takes pawn. And now my opponent's in a little bit of time trouble now. I'm just going to say it right now. He has 29 seconds. I have 4 minutes and 59 seconds. Yeah, so I play queen takes pawn. He slides his rook to d4, knight e8, queen c5, queen a7. Now here I think I miscalculated a little bit. You'll see how I miscalculated. This is all fine. Basically just shuffling your pieces around. He slides his queen back to c3. I play queen a5. I really want to trade his queens off, even though he's a little time. But here I might have miscalculated a bit. I think here with the check, I don't think that necessarily is third order because sure he takes my rook, but now I get the queen, and now he has the rook pair. Now actually I'm going to check the computer analysis. Computer analysis says it's fine. I agree it's fine, but I think I was actually surprised. I thought it had some like really complicated idea where white was somehow just holding this for a draw. Maybe I was just mistaken, but I could have sworn I saw that earlier when I was looking at the evaluation. But no, yeah, this to me this all made perfect sense. Yeah, my opponent he played a Sicilian variation he didn't know. I know most of the variations of this Najdorf Sicilian into the Schwächen again. Basically, any variation you can transpose the Najdorf into. I love my Sicilian, so I spent a lot of time studying it. But yeah, I think he just didn't know how to play the opening. In fact, like I'll just tell you, like here he played fine, but then after this, I don't think he was expecting pawn to e6. He spent about 10 seconds. Maybe he did. Maybe just deciding what to do. But yeah, no, I'm still at 9 minutes and 30 seconds, and he's at 8 minutes and 30 seconds. I don't think he knew his opening fully. That's kind of how you can punish it. Like, I know people say don't worry about the openings too much as a beginner, but especially if you're playing with no increment, I think just knowing the opening can probably be the most beneficial thing, because you can punish your opponents for stupid mistakes. Even at the higher level, like for me, I learned chess kind of backwards. I did checkmating patterns first, and then I kind of study like endgame techniques, because to me, endgame techniques were more math based, and I thought that was kind of a fun way to just calculate. But yeah, I feel like maybe just to your openings, you should easily be fine, especially at the slower level. Obviously, I would not recommend this line of the Sicilian 2 beginners, because you see what happens. It's too much to remember, and you don't really know what's happening. And like I have a 5-minute lead on my opponent, and he loses the game. A relatively simple game. Not simple game. Sicilian's most complicated opening. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, like after this, like I don't know. I think you'd have to play something like we could actually try to work this out together. I think something like bishop takes g6 he has to do. H takes, fix my pawn structure. Maybe rook takes. What's wrong with rook takes e6? I want rook b7. Because rook b7, I can't sack this anymore. But I think after this, you're just winning because of that. Yeah. What isn't the... Oh, the computer sees this. Rook b1. And you just play queen d4, h3, a1. Rook b4. Before rook takes check, takes queen e4, rook f1, rook e1, rook f1, f1. Yeah, and then you know this is just really trivial. You play something like queen e2, not that, rook b1. Yeah, and you just start pawn storming. In h2, queen takes f2, b3, knight d5, or knight d5. Ah, knight d5, yeah. Rook f3. But you see how I'm calculating, like, it's kind of how you have to look. You just look at what your opponent can do, and that's kind of, I'm getting sidetracked with this long line of finishing the game, but to me, that this just made the most sense, like this opening. And yeah, if you like the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.